Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Tim Kirby Russia. You know the man who's beside me. Larry Johnson is here with us. And I have sort of one big topic for Larry today. It's how the Ukraine war is going to play into the elections, both before them and after them. Let's actually start paradoxically with after the elections. Larry, do you think that it'll make a difference if one candidate or the other gets elected? On the one hand, Trump says he kind of wants to make the war in Ukraine go away. But on the other hand, remember, with the Democrats, during the very beginning of a new, fresh term, it's a perfect time to get rid of old projects and start new ones. Afghanistan. Yeah. So do you think that something is going to change in the Ukraine war after the elections? Or is this thing going to go on for another 4 years?
No, it's not going to go on for 4 years. It's just you're not going to have enough people in Ukraine to sustain the fight. But I do think there'd be a big difference between Trump and Harris. Trump will bring an end to the war one way or another, if for no other reason, just through neglect. Harris, she's not the decision maker. She's not the one who's articulating the vision and directing people what to do. And be told what to do, and those interests that are profiting off of this war will continue to direct find somewhere to keep it going. If you just checked out what's happened to stock prices, say of Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Raytheon over the last 2.5 years, the stock prices have almost doubled. In many cases, more than doubled. So it's been very lucrative. This is money, nothing else.
Well, then, could there be, paradoxically, if the United States gives up on Ukraine, could those stock prices then really crash, or is that not the way things work?
Yeah. No, there's if you have an enemy, and you got to always create and manufacture one in order to justify an 850, it's going to be $900 billion, maybe $1 trillion defense. The defeat of Ukraine, though, also exposes that a lot of these defense contractors are just producing very expensive junk that work. Tested combat and has failed. So they very well could suffer. There could be a backlash against them. The companies that are involved with making drones, for example, they're going to do well.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly the small drones, the FPVs. Big demand for those. That's going to keep increasing. But the legacy systems, they've been exposed as, in many cases, just completely ineffective, inadequate. Whether we're talking the limitations on the Patriot missile batteries, or M1 Abrams tanks, even the Javelin anti-guided missile. So there hasn't been any weapons system that the United States has employed on the battlefield with Ukraine, on behalf of Ukraine, where people are going, man, I got to get me one of those. That's incredible. Haven't had that.
Well, yeah, because it seems like it may be cliche to say this at this point, but it seems like basically every wonder weapon at some point made some sort of small impact, and then the Russians kind of learned how to deal with it. Because if you remember at the beginning of the war, the Javelin was going to be the end of every Russian tank, and now for some reason they're not.
Right.
So, yeah. But anyways, that was getting into after the election. Again, I want to hear about before the election because, Larry, I don't want to repeat lies to people or bad talking points. And one thing that people have been saying over and over again is that the Ukraine war is going to have a huge effect on the U.S. elections. And that one reason why the United States can't back down or back off or sort of give up on Project Ukraine is because of the elections. And I don't really agree with that. I think, then again, remember, people can have an irrational belief, but I think that tomorrow they could throw Ukraine under the bus and it would not affect the vote in any significant way. Or am I just in the weirdo Russia land and I've lost touch?
No, you're right. 2.5 years ago, people, a lot of Americans energized, we got to stand with Ukraine. Now they can, they can't find Ukraine on a map, and it's not an issue. The big issue is whether we're going to get ourselves embroiled in a war, and Americans are going to be forced to learn geography again. It was the old saying that was attributed to Mark Twain. I'm not sure it was true, but he said that war was God's way of teaching Americans about geography. You're forced to learn names of places, Kursk, and Donetsk, and Mariupol, and Zaporizhia. All of a sudden, you get a whole new vocabulary. Same with Iraq. Same with Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
You get them to Kandahar. So. But it's not. The only factor is the United States going to get involved with what is going to be seen as another needless foreign war?
Well, to be honest, Larry, I actually think if the United States is going to get involved anywhere, it's going to be to save Israel's butt. Because, again, maybe I'm repeating fake talking points. People keep saying over and over again that Israel's in deep trouble. Their economy is at, negative, 15, 20% GDP year on year, all sorts of losses. After the election is over, and again, the sort of leadership has carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want, are they going to go into Israel and try to save the day? Is that a possibility? Or do you think that they're going to just sort of also let that one play out, irregardless of how many bribes they're able to send through lobbyists?
No, I agree with you that between the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel-Palestine, that the one that creates the greatest risk of direct U.S. involvement is Israel. The United States, though, again, is being exposed as a military weakling in some aspects. Just yesterday, we learned that the only oiler, so the ships that are called oilers are ships that are support ships that provide fuel, food, and other supplies to the ships in a fleet to keep them at sea. And apparently this one ran aground, so it's no longer available. And it was the only one in the Persian Gulf. Right. So the U.S. aircraft carrier there is going to have to withdraw because they don't have another oiler to send out.
Wait, do you have to know why did it run aground?
Captain screwed up on the navigation.
Holy crap!
They got too close to shore, and they just didn't. Again, this when you're focused on hiring people because they're black or they're transgender or they claim to be some sort of sexual minority, as opposed to worried about are they competent? Mm-hmm. Can they read a damn map or an ocean chart? This is what you get. So, but the point is, the United States has flooded the zone with a lot of military assets, and they just an additional unit of the 101st Airborne was sent yesterday. Apparently, they're going to go. I've heard they're going to Oman in the Persian Gulf, but some are perceiving it as them going into Israel. So, I don't know what the truth is, but.
But one thing about going into Oman, in a sense of they have some base there, and they in theory have the right to go. Okay,
right. So the U.S. has bases throughout the Persian Gulf. Actually, we've got 750 of them around the world. So it's not like there's any lack of places to stay. The American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee really has bought the U.S. Congress, the U.S. political leadership. Israeli money plays an enormous role here in getting the United States to back Israel, because frankly, without the U.S. backing, Israel probably wouldn't be able to continue to exist. And so what makes the next several months very, very perilous, dangerous, one, the Israelis seem hell-bent on going into Lebanon.
Yeah.
They believe that they can defeat Hezbollah, even though after 11, now going on 12 months, they have failed to defeat Hamas. They talked at the outset about exterminating Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we are, 12 months later, Hamas is still standing. Hamas leadership is still operating. Now, Israel's making the claim they're going to do the same to Hezbollah. Unlike Hamas, Hezbollah is a far more organized, sophisticated group and better trained, better equipped. They have better underground facilities, more extensive underground facilities than anything Hamas has. So Israel's doesn't have, frankly, the military power to root them out, but that's exactly what they're going to try to do. Mm-hmm. And we've seen over the last week, they've stepped up their attacks using aircraft above the ground. Well, they're killing Lebanese civilians. They're not killing Hezbollah fighters. They claim they're taking out missile sites. That's just not true. The missile sites are underground. The supplies are underground. The arsenals are not stored above ground. So Israel is engaged in a dangerous act of military self-deception. So this thing very well could get out of hand before the election, and this war could, I think, could really undermine further support for Kamala Harris and boost support for Donald Trump.
Now, one question that you might have a much better answer for than I could propose is if we look at Syria and we look at Lebanon, okay? I've had the chance to meet a lot of people from both of those countries, thankfully. And the one thing that I get is the sort of vibe, to use common parlance, of these countries is they're kind of a mess. Obviously, Syria is still divided territorially because of the civil war, and Lebanon has always been a very divided society for a long time, okay? But regardless, are they just afraid that Israel will nuke them? Because why do Syria and now Lebanon, they really just sort of sit there and let Israel periodically strike them with very little retaliation? Why is there this extreme level of passivity?
Well, I'm not sure so much passivity. Part of the Lebanese military is just not capable of launching those kinds of retaliatory strikes, whereas Hezbollah has been hitting back. So we've seen it over the last 3 weeks. Israel will launch attacks into southern Lebanon, and then the Hezbollah will return with rockets. Just yesterday or today, Hezbollah finally fired back with a ballistic missile. Mm-hmm. So they're sending Israel a message that they can up the game quite a bit. Syria, as well, as they were engaging Israeli aircraft yesterday with their air defense systems. So sometimes a lot of that doesn't get reported in the West. So what I see happening is Israel's overextending itself. Israel does not have the ability to sustain and expand operations like it's trying to do. And it's going to ultimately fall on its face.
Now, if we hop back to the Ukrainian situation for a bit, again, this is something that we haven't talked about yet on my channel, so we're going to give you the first sort of crack at the issue. The Zelensky either peace plan or victory plan, depending on what source of information. What is this new plan? Why is he going back to this hype, let's get together and chit-chat about how we can end the war, but maybe we won't end the war? Is this connected to the elections? Again, our overall topic for today. What is this all about? What is he actually trying to achieve? Or is he just doing his usual lapdog thing of demanding more and more stuff, more, keep the corruption train going?
No, it's an act of desperation on his part, because he knows that the end is near, they keep talking about a year or 2 years. He doesn't have a year. He's lucky if he's got 3 months, 4 months. Uh, the I think this winter will bring an end to the conflict and to the war,
Mhm.
because I don't see how Ukraine will be able to sustain the because there's no stomach in the United States to continue funding the Ukrainian war effort. And they're already seen split in the NATO countries.
Mhm.
Germany and Poland are at odds. So this is just the last desperate throw of roll of the dice by Zelensky. And what was his piss plan, as he calls it, the piss plan. His piss plan is give me more money, negotiate with the Russians, tell the Russians they can give us our territory back and make me a member of NATO. Oh, good peace plan. I'm sure that'll bring an end to the conflict. Russia, from what I've seen, has no intention of sitting down and negotiating anymore. And if they called me in as an advisor and say, "What should we do?" I'd say, absolutely not. There's nothing to negotiate here except surrender. That's it. And just make sure the West understands that the opportunity the opportunity for negotiations and peaceful settlement that came and went in large part because you, the West, sabotaged it. So you're going to get what you didn't want, a complete defeat of Ukraine, and also an indirect defeat of NATO.
And so, how do you think this capitulation is going to look? Is this going to be a thing where Russian forces start to sit around the edge of Kiev and Zelensky's just like, I'm done, I capitulate? Or is it going to have to be that the Russians are going to have to go to the Polish border, as we've heard repeated many times again, and Washington will have sort of no choice but to accept it? How is this process going to play out? Do you have any ideas on that issue?
What I've seen is I think Russia has been reluctant to have to go all the way to the Polish border. But as the West persists in propping up this neo-Nazi regime that is in charge in Kiev, they may very well have to do that. That's one of the reasons you're seeing Putin upping the strength of the Russian army, and it's set to hit with reserves included be 2.3 million men by the end of next year. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the West can even come close to that. The United States is struggling to recruit and maintain 450,000 U.S. Army soldiers. So I think it's going to take a military victory by Russia, and that military victory means the actual surrender of the Ukrainian army.
All right. Well, hopefully that will happen this winter, as you said, because it would be nice to have this thing over. Larry, when you're kind of living on this end of things, I don't know what it feels like from America, but this whole threat of, say, World War III, our mutual acquaintance Scott Ritter mentioned that we almost all died last weekend because they could have agreed to allow Zelensky to use long-range missiles and strike Moscow, launching potentially a nuclear war. But boy, do you feel that here. You can really feel it, and like I was even just talking to some farmers the other day, and they said there's not a tractor driver left in Russia. Everyone who drove a tractor now drives a tank for way more money and a lot more, let's just say, moral satisfaction in their work. So it's it's a weird feeling, but gosh, I hope you're right that this is over soon.
Well, again, you highlight something that it's a big difference between Russia and the United States. The Russian people have grown over the last 2.5 years to realize that they're a threat. They are at risk. They are being threatened. And their very existence is being threatened. And, the Russian people have a history of facing these kinds of threats. and dealing with them. The Americans don't have any clue whatsoever. We go around throwing people all the time and never pay any kind of consequence for it, and never feel the threat here at home.
Mm.
And that's why I think that the recent comments by just not only Vladimir Putin but Sergei Lavrov, Sergei Rybkov, and Ambassador Nevensia, as well as the Russian ambassador to Washington, all of them are talking about that, hey, if the West persists in supplying long-range missiles and allowing these hits to take place inside Russia, that the United States is going to feel the pain. It's been hiding behind oceans for years.
No.
And that really hasn't sunk into Americans. They don't believe it.
Well, the oceans have gotten a lot smaller in a geopolitical sense than they would be 100 years ago, or especially 200 years ago, when it was a titanic task to even theoretically attack the United States. Heck, even to be honest, for the Japanese during World War II to try to launch a land invasion of the United States would have been an incomprehensible ordeal over that level of distance. And now, with hypersonic missiles especially, everything is close. Everything.
Yeah. Well, you can the things you can do with the missiles that, frankly, you don't want to have to do with soldiers. Putting soldiers on the ground here in the United States and try to sustain them. The Brits learned back in 1776 that was an impossible task.
Mm. Yeah. That's dead. To be honest, it's actually impressive that they were, especially like the War of 1812, that they were even able to somehow conduct that conflict over that distant of a supply line with that level of technology is impressive, even though they lost. Just being able to sort of enact that kind of operation is nuts. Because, again, the Japanese might have wanted to, but they couldn't even do that kind of thing during World War II. But anyways, Larry, thank you very much for your time, very much for your views on things. It's always good to get a real expert and sober opinion on things rather than a lot of the, let's just say, emotional stuff I hear online. So anyways, Larry Johnson, Sonar 21, link will be in the description. And Larry, if you ever need me for your program, you just let me know.
Will do, Tim. Hey, thanks, buddy.
All the best, man. Talk to you later.
Later. Bye.